This hour on I-24 News, there is every indication that North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un, using his family's personal train, just made a surprise visit to Beijing, China. Talks between North and South Korea begin in days.
Plus, the head of the UN World Food Program is warning about another massive global migrant crisis.
And the state of California suing the Trump administration. At issue, the administration's decision to ask a citizenship question on the next census form.
From the I-24 News Studios in Times Square in New York, this is Crossroads with David Schuster and Shayna Estulin.
Hello, everybody. Derek Dennis is in for Shayna. Great to have you here, as always.
Thanks for having me.
This was a day of intrigue in China and along the Korean Peninsula. There are strong indications that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un just met with Chinese leaders in Beijing.
Kim's personal train was seen pulling out of a station in the Chinese capital earlier in the day. Several news reports suggest it was carrying a large North Korean delegation, including Kim himself.
The action in Beijing comes just 48 hours before Kim is supposed to sit down with leaders from South Korea for a round of high-level talks. International Affairs correspondent Bianca Zanini has the latest.
This convoy in Beijing could contain a surprising passenger, North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Several media outlets reporting that the supreme leader, or at least one of his top-level representatives, arrived in Beijing on Monday and left again Tuesday after a whirlwind visit. Heightened security at the border between China and North Korea, heavy police presence on important streets and hotels, and that mysterious train set to carry the North's #1. But the Chinese are denying any knowledge of a visit.
At present, I don't know anything about the situation you mention.
That's to be expected. In less than 2 months, Kim Jong-un is set to meet first South Korea's Moon Jae-in and then U.S. President Donald Trump. China, not yet set to participate, may be worried about losing influence, while Kim could use a little help from his friends, or at least from his giant neighbor, and at least behind the scenes.
The North Korea will try not to display it as to show as if they need the legitimacy of China, but without the Chinese backing, Kim Jong-un will have problem of getting deal with the Americans or with the South Koreans.
According to Dr. Lefkowitz, the relationship between the two Koreas is relatively good, at least for now. They aren't threatening each other, focusing instead on paving the way to the highly anticipated Trump-Kim summit, a meeting where the stakes seem to only be increasing.
John Bolton's nomination is a catalyst for trying to get a deal, because everyone understands that if once John Bolton gets into the White House assisting Donald Trump, this will change the game. This will be a new ball game. Bolton supports a more harsh stand versus North Korea. And all the sides are trying to get a deal before Bolton gets into the office.
Bianca Zanini, I-24 News.
Let's now bring in John Sitilides, a geopolitical strategist for Trilogy Advisors. And John, why would Kim Jong-un need to physically go to Beijing? Why couldn't he have these conversations over the phone or via video conference, unless he and the Chinese were fearful that that might get hacked somehow?
If we look at how this has all played out over the last several weeks in preparation for the Trump-Kim Jong-un summit in May, China has been largely out of the picture, and I believe that's an unacceptable posture for China. So I think all of this fanfare about Kim Jong-un and China is really more about China's emergence or re-emergence into this whole picture. For certain, Xi Jinping, now that he's president for life of China, is not going to allow Kim Jong-un to see another foreign leader before he sees Xi Jinping as the first visit for the North Korean leader. So I think that's the first issue that we have here, the primacy of China in whatever the talks are shaping up to become. And then really it's a matter of the unprecedented sanctions that have been foisted upon North Korea by the international community, including China. The fact that North Korea's U.S. dollar and foreign currency reserves are expected to be exhausted by about October. And as was just mentioned in the previous segment, I think John Bolton is very much a factor, although he's coming into the White House on April 9th. So he's certainly going to be influencing the way the talks are being set up and how they're actually implemented come May.
John, all eyes have been on North Korea and its nuclear program. Do you think that this visit to China is somehow a way for China to try and get the North to stop its aggression and play nice?
I don't know if that's the strategy on China's part. I think, first of all, I think the Chinese would like to know what is Kim Jong-un's strategy vis-a-vis both the South Koreans for talks that are coming in a few days, and then in meeting with President Trump in May. And then I think also Kim Jong-un, who I believe is actually far more practical and rational than many of his detractors have criticized him for being, is probably looking to find it from Xi Jinping, who's spent time with President Trump last March, we recall, at Mar-a-Lago, and they've also had many phone conversations, is looking to find out from Xi Jinping what is Donald Trump all about and what can Kim Jong-un potentially expect when they meet in 2 months.
Is it also possible that maybe the discussion was on exactly what it is the final deal might be, given that the United States will not allow North Korea to have any sort of nuclear program, and the North Koreans, at least for now, are adamant that the United States remove its troops from the Korean Peninsula?
I think that's probably one of the directions the talks will go in, and it seems right now that it's very difficult to see how we completely denuclearize North Korea. I mean, the reason that North Korea is having these talks is because they've quite effectively established themselves as a nuclear power in Asia with the ability to strike at the United States. If there's some other deal in place where there's a cap on missiles or there's a scaling back of the production, and now we have the news, I think reported by the New York Times just in the last couple of hours, that a new nuclear reactor that's able to produce 4 times the ingredients that are required for nuclear bombs has just been at least discovered or revealed, we should say, by intelligence sources. So I think these are all going to come into the mix, but I think it's going to be very difficult right now to see how we completely denuclearize North Korea. But I think that still is going to be the end strategy for President Trump, aided by John Bolton.
John, why do you think the secrecy surrounding this visit? Why would Kim Jong-un go under, this cover here on this private train? And no one really knows he was actually there. The reports are he was there, but no one actually really saw him. Why the secrecy?
Look, everything about North Korea is a matter of the sort of most extreme secrecy. One of the problems that we've had with North Korea over the years is that we have really no good human intelligence sources on the ground there. So a lot of this has been trying to divine what is happening in the North Korean regime as opposed to having any certain knowledge. We also don't know what the Chinese are looking to reveal to the world at their pace, rather than having foreign journalists finding out, reporting, or speculating, as we're doing right now and is probably happening all around the world. There's also the possibility, I might add, that you might have a similar trip by Kim Jong-un to Russia to meet with Vladimir Putin, who tends to be outside of many of these discussions on North Korea strategy in Asia and vis-a-vis the United States. But the Russians have also been major supporters of the North Korean economy and of North Korea's repressive tactics. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a possible Russia game to be played here as well.
John Sitilides, who is a geopolitical strategist for Trilogy Advisors. John, thanks for coming in and doing this. We appreciate it. Derek, what do you make of the intrigue and skullduggery and all this?
Intrigue is the right word. I find it really intriguing that he would go on this secret mission, only there for, what, 24 hours or so, and then no one can really confirm he was actually there. They think he was part of this delegation, so very intriguing.
I like John's point about how maybe this was about paying respect to China, and that's why he had to be there, but I also wonder if the secrecy was in part because you think about all the sort of satellites and spy satellites and the desire to be able to know exactly where Kim Jong-un and also Xi Jinping are going at all times. That's valuable intelligence if the U.S. can ever crack that nut.
Yeah.
So maybe it's to try to throw them off. Who knows? Anyway, in the Middle East, 3 Palestinians from Gaza armed with grenades and knives traveled miles into Israeli territory before they were stopped by Israeli military forces. This is the second foiled attack this week.
And in Syria, hundreds of people are being evacuated from inside eastern Ghouta as the fighting appears to wind down. But first, a look at some other stories making headlines across the Middle East.
This is Eye on the Middle East, with stories from the region you likely didn't see in the news. The United
United Arab Emirates says that one of 4 nuclear reactors at its debut plant has been completed as it moves closer to becoming the first Arab nation to produce atomic power. The announcement came after visiting South Korean President Moon Jae-in and Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed toured the $20 billion Baraka plant. The achievement has been described as historic for the energy sector of UAE. Luxury Saudi-owned cars have been defaced in London by a vandal or vandals, condemning the country's bombing campaign in Yemen, which is currently the scene of what the UN has described as the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Images have emerged on social media of cars with Saudi number plates being sprayed with words such as war. In one video, the passenger of a 4x4 vehicle appears to be hit with a spray can as he is confronted by a man vandalizing another car. A Palestinian is running for U.S. Congress, and if elected, Rashida Tlaib will be the first Muslim female on Capitol Hill. Among her goals, she says, is impeaching the president and helping people of Michigan's 13th congressional district. In 2016, New York Magazine named her one of the 10 activists who may become the future of the Democratic Party as the new Obama. The number of Jews and Arabs between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River is at or near parity. The figures cited by Israeli officials raising questions whether Israel can remain a democracy if it keeps territory where Palestinians seek a state. Ahmed Tibi, an Arab legislator in the Israeli parliament, says if a two-state solution is not implemented soon, Israel may not have a Jewish prime minister in the future.
We are going to that direction, apartheid or an Arab-Palestinian prime minister.
And that's it. There's a lot going on in the Middle East, but don't worry, we'll keep an eye on it for you. See you next time.